Welcome back to LimQ Plus, everyone. On this channel, I'm 100%ing Breath of the Wild by a bit every day until Tears of the Kingdom comes out. And today, that is in 89 days. Like I said yesterday, we've now breached the 90-day barrier. And we're basically exactly 3 months away. Today, in 3 months, somewhere in a couple hours from now, I'm going to be playing Tears of the Kingdom, and maybe you too, if you got it in the Australian or Japanese eShop. But today I want to talk about something I literally thought about for like 3 hours in bed yesterday. I have a Discord server, basically for my live stream, where I discuss when I go live on Twitch and just gaming stuff in general. And obviously we've been talking about Tears of the Kingdom a lot. And one topic that I think a couple of my community members wanted to discuss yesterday, I feel like we all had the same idea kind of at the same time. Excuse me. And I'm sure a couple of you guys have maybe thought about something similar. And that's gonna be the Blood Moon in the new Tears of the Kingdom teaser. And the very obvious kind of parallel that you can basically draw towards Majora's Mask. Now, in Majora's Mask, the moon was obviously a very scary part of the game. After 3 days in Majora's Mask, the moon would crash and essentially end your game. But obviously, you could basically revert time in order to prevent that from happening. Now, what if, and this is something that I've been thinking about a lot, we kind of have a comeback of this mechanic in Tears of the Kingdom. I think initially a lot more people had this idea. I think when Tears of the Kingdom first was announced, most people immediately thought about Majora's Mask in general, because Majora's Mask up until that point was kind of like the first or only somewhat sequel to a mainline Zelda game. So a lot of people thought of Majora's Mask and thought of Tears of the Kingdom as a darker Majora's Mask style game to Breath of the Wild. And now that we've seen the moon, the Blood Moon, be such a central part of the game, I feel like I'm thinking about this more and more, and as always, there might be the moon might, as far as we know, only have that short scene happen in Tears of the Kingdom where it shoots some red malice down. But let's give some thought to this theory, and let's pretend Tears of the Kingdom is kind of a little bit more like Majora's Mask. I want to tell you, first of all, a couple of things that I've noticed is the paraglider skins in Tears of the Kingdom, right? We get a paraglider skin depending on what amiibo we scan, and you get one for the Rider amiibo from Breath of the Wild, you get one for the new Tears of the Kingdom amiibo, and the other two amiibos that we've seen come from Skyward Sword, the Skyward Sword HD remake, one of the most recent games. Obviously, Skyward Sword seems to be pretty prevalent in Tears of the Kingdom with the flying islands. A lot of people continuously draw parallels. And the other one just happens to be Majora's Mask. Now, obviously, this could simply be because Majora's Mask makes for a cool paraglider skin. A lot of people seem to love the Majora's Mask paraglider skin. But it could also be because maybe Tears of the Kingdom is more similar to Majora's Mask than we had previously thought. Maybe the gameplay mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom are actually like Majora's Mask. And when I thought about this, and when I thought about the moon potentially being a threat in Tears of the Kingdom, and that scene that we've seen in the teaser potentially being the end of Hyrule, we have to prevent it in the game, otherwise we lose. Maybe we also have some sort of day restriction. There's like 3 days. Breath of the Wild already has a day and night mechanic. Maybe after a week, the Blood Moon was always basically consistently happening after a certain amount of days, but maybe in Tears of the Kingdom, when it's at its biggest power. Again, this is a crackpot theory. I'm not claiming that this is going to be true, but just imagine it, right? 3 days, a week after we start our Tears of the Kingdom playthrough, the moon attacks Hyrule and the game is over. But from the Zonai or whatever, we get some time reversal mechanic that we can use to go back in time and potentially prevent this from happening. Now, what I find so interesting about this is that this mechanic alone would immediately, in my opinion, destroy a ton of the concerns that people are having about the game potentially feeling too much like a DLC. Just because that this as a gameplay mechanic will completely change the way we play Breath of the Wild. Suddenly, we have this time pressure, we have to make our decisions around this time mechanic. And I immediately think, yeah, this would completely change the way that the game feels. Now, I already thought about some gameplay mechanics that could be in place for this. What if every time we go back in time, we do lose our progress? Let's say the flying islands disappear again. We've already seen in the Tears of the Kingdom teaser that in some of the shots, for example, the maze shrines, they seem to be, the mazes themselves, they seem to be on the ground, whereas in other shots the mazes already seem to be flying. Maybe at the start the Sky Islands are not there and later they appear, something like that. And whenever you go back in time, you basically go back to the beginning of the game in terms of world progression, but maybe some other things you keep. And one like main idea for this immediately made a ton of sense to me. Let's pretend when we start the game we have basically no chance to reaching the end of the game. And now let me go one step more crazy, one step completely over the top. What if the final boss, what if the end of the game is like, let's go completely crazy. What if the final boss is literally on the moon? Some people have basically asked for this before. Have the Legend of Zelda series go a little bit more into like a sci-fi direction, right? What if the final boss, let it be Ganondorf, let it be Demise or whatever, is literally on the Blood Moon, and we have to eventually, through some weird Zonai technology, reach the Blood Moon to fight the boss there. Despite the fact this is absurd, obviously it would be pretty cool to literally fight the final boss on the Blood Moon. But let's say throughout the game we always lose our progress when we go back in time. But what we don't lose is, for example, vehicle parts. We get these vehicle parts and we can upload them, whatever, to some Zonai technology. So at first we traverse through the game slowly and a little bit tedious, but as we make progress and we get more vehicle parts, it's actually much more easier to move through the game and get closer to be able to actually challenge the final boss. For speedruns, this could be extremely interesting, potentially with some possibility to beat the game throughout the first cycle or whatever. I've been thinking about this idea so much because I think it would be so extremely cool. Will it be like that? Probably not. Also, that it looked like that Octorok just drowned. Will it be like that? Probably not. Is there some small chance, some potential that some of these mechanics are in place? Maybe. I think the moon itself being a more central piece, and most of us thought a lot of people's mind will simply go to Majora's Mask, and I think kind of going crazy with that idea is incredibly exciting. Mainly because I think if a mechanic like this is in place, for me, immediately all of my concerns about the game feeling too much like a DLC, because it would play so differently in many ways, would immediately be gone. And I think this has become my most favorite theory, not because I think it's the most likely, but I think I would enjoy it the most. And yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot. Now, for example, I just wanted to talk about this too. Let's pretend, just because I already went in on that crackpot theory of the final boss being in the moon. I honestly, at this point, wouldn't even be surprised if you can build a Zonai spaceship. We've seen Zonai cars, we've seen Zonai flying machines, hot air balloons. Who knows? I'm sure a lot of people would actually dislike this, because at the end of the day, the Legend of Zelda series has at heart always been a fantasy series. I think with this game, they already kind of leaned in on some sci-fi elements, especially with the inclusion of like guardians and stuff. So, I don't know. Let me know if you think this would... let me know, not if you think, but let me know if this would be something you hate. The idea of having it more centered around Majora's Mask and potentially the moon, or even getting to the literal moon at one point. Or if you think this is a cool idea. At the end of the day, Tears of the Kingdom might have nothing to do with Majora's Mask at all, and they just put a Majora's Mask paraglider skin in there because it looks cool on the paraglider, and the Blood Moon is a cool thing. But I think it's very interesting to think about this idea, and despite me not thinking that most of what I discussed today will end up in the game, it's pretty fun to me, pretty exciting to kind of think about how this could impact the game. Mainly, once again, this inclusion of this mechanic, the Majora's Mask type cycle time mechanic, would, to me, solve the potential issue of Tears of the Kingdom feeling too much like a glorified DLC and more like a new game. At least in terms of gameplay mechanics. But that's it. I just wanted to discuss this moon theory, this Majora's Mask Tears of the Kingdom moon theory. We are at 66.66%, actually kind of eerie, almost, at this Korok seed, which is why I'm gonna call it off for today. Again, let me know your thoughts. Tears of the Kingdom comes out in 89 days. I'll be back tomorrow with another video, maybe discussing something completely different. Eventually, we're gonna be running out of things to talk about with this most recent trailer. And we'll go back to talking about some Breath of the Wild stuff and potentially having some guests on. But thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Peace.